What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another week of Oil and Gas Startups Podcast. Me and Jake, we've been just alternating hosting duties here lately. Usually we both host it together, but lately it's like I do one, he does one. He said this one's geothermal. I said, all right, you better let me take that one. You don't know shit about geothermal, so I'll take this one. But we got my guys, Shawn and Danny here. How are y'all doing today?
Yeah, doing great.
Yeah, doing good.
Good.
Excited. Thanks.
Yeah, so y'all are based in Houston, right? Is it downtown Houston?
Yeah, that's right. We were in the Galleria for first part of the year and out of the Cannon, and then moved over to their Esperson dome or Esperson building.
Cool.
Location.
Cool. Yeah, so I'm excited to hear about y'all's company, Criterion, not Criterion, as I previously mispronounced it. So tell me a little bit, just high level, what you guys do, and then I'm going to dive into there.
Cool.
Yeah, sure. So we are a geothermal energy development company focused on decentralized direct energy projects for high energy consuming facilities. And, our solution offers both heat and power energy to the customer. And, we're looking to take geothermal everywhere and, deliver next generation geothermal, right? Not just conventional geothermal, which is geographically constrained, right? We're trying to do geothermal in new places.
Okay. Yeah, I'm going to have a ton of questions for you guys as someone that's my curiosity's piqued with geothermal. I've been learning a lot about geothermal over the last 2 years. I've got buddies like Tim over at Fervo Energy that are, a former oil and gas guy that's taken some oil and gas drilling and completions concepts over. So I've been learning about it from that angle and just learning about geothermal historically, from a traditional standpoint. And as you mentioned, you have a lot of limitations. The main one being geologically based, or, one, we need to go deeper in hotter areas, and then that's going to limit to where you can do it geographically. So I think you guys are going to be able to school me up on your way of thinking of what is new age geothermal. Tell me a little bit about y'all's backgrounds real quick before we get into the weeds of geothermal. Why don't you tell me a little bit about what your background is, and then we'll follow up with you.
Yeah, sure. I'll try to give you the concise version, but who knows? May wander a little bit. I grew up in Houston. Always wanted to be an attorney. Actually, growing up, did
Who wants to be
political
an attorney,
science.
man? What's wrong with you?
I know. Well,
Both of our
both of
wives.
us are married to
Both of
attorneys,
y'all.
so yeah,
It's in the family.
That's right. But that was kind of what I wanted to do as a kid. I fell in love with the founding fathers in America and all these things, and
Yeah.
it's like I want to make a positive impact and an impression on the world, and this is how I'm going to do it. And to get there, like I could need to be an attorney because all the founding fathers were attorneys or whatever.
That's
right?
good logic. That's as fair of logic as I've
simple,
ever heard.
yeah. So that was the dream. I did political science, philosophy, started studying, and wasn't quite where I needed to be to go to the schools I wanted. So instead, started working in oil and gas. My dad's been in the business my whole life, majority of his career. So started doing economic evaluations with him at a royalty company and kind of learned the business from there. Just happened to kind of fall into it and built somewhat of a career out of that. I did consulting and worked at a royalty shop to start. From there, went to a small kind of Gulf Coast operator, E&P. We ended up being more like a family office of sorts, but that was 2011, got involved in the shale, kind of liquid shale revolution.
Yeah.
We had Marcellus assets and we had Mississippi Lime assets, and those were big JVs that we were doing. So I was doing corporate reserves for that company, and then got recruited and started looking at investment banking. So spent the last 6.5 years at Credit Suisse in their A&D oil and gas group, and it was a fantastic experience. Really shaped my life. Led me to business school, and that's kind of how me and this guy met.
Y'all link up at business school?
Yeah.
Is that where it happened?
Yeah, that's right, at Rice.
Okay,
we were
cool.
doing an MBA program there.
Oh,
so
nice.
yeah, that's when we started Criterion, actually.
Chuck Yates is over in the back studio right now recording. He's
Okay.
big time Rice MBA. Very proud of it. I
Yeah.
always make fun of him.
Yeah,
But yeah,
He's got his rice gear on. Yeah, he sure does. That's right.
Yeah, if you guys, I'll make sure y'all cross paths before y'all leave.
That'd be
That we all
great.
catch up. So yeah, so y'all met at business school. How'd you get to business school?
So my background, I grew up in Plano, Texas, and went to school at the University of Oklahoma. and got a petroleum engineering degree.
You gotta say Boomer Sooner.
Yeah, Boomer Sooner. I'm a little soft on my Sooners this week.
I was gonna say it's been a rough week
with
for
all
y'all.
the announcements.
Yeah.
I've been trying not to. I usually play that one pretty hard, but this week it's a little soft.
You got
so
your tail tucked in between your legs this week. Yeah.
little bit. So went into oil and gas. I mean, straight away, right? Like petroleum engineering. That's what I wanted to do, and what I was what I've been passionate about for a long time. And did an internship for Schlumberger. Spent some time in the field, got my feet wet, and then went to work for Anadarko Petroleum in the Woodlands right out of school. So I spent a good 12 or 13 years at Anadarko. Worked in drilling, completions, and reservoir engineering across different assets in the U.S. and overseas and in Africa as well, and
Oh, cool.
North Africa, Tunisia, and Mozambique. Got to work some of the deep water projects there, and in Ghana as well. So I got to cover the gamut of the conventional and the unconventional oil and gas world. And then after that, went to work for Endeavor Energy Resources out of Midland, Texas.
Midland. Yep.
Yeah, and spent some time there as engineering manager, and then jumped into entrepreneurship full time last year, and dove into geothermal 100% with Criterion.
Yeah. So let's
2
talk
years
about
ago.
that. Yeah. Shout out to Endeavor and little Autry out there. That's I think that there's a lot of people in oil and gas that are looking at geothermal. It's very analogous in terms of skill sets, and the way I look at it is like, who's better at drilling wells than oil and gas people, right? So it makes a lot of sense that people are looking at doing that. Even we're hosting a big hackathon up here in a couple of months for 150 geophysicists that are working on a geothermal data set. So
Awesome.
a lot of movement in the space, right? It's cool to hear that both y'all had backgrounds in oil and gas, and then now you're attacking geothermal. Let's talk about, how did that come to be? Like, what made you guys want to start working in geothermal, and kind of talk about that. I was about to call it a transition. I don't know if it's transition.
No,
but
that's exactly what it is. I mean, and that's really what gets us excited about the space, is that transition to decarbonization and all the things that it feels more and more like we need to start addressing. And
Yeah.
feels like this is a logical step. And yeah, we're big proponents of geothermal and cheerleaders for all that. But really, Danny and I actually started Criterion Investment Partners in 2018 when we were in school as a search fund, and we did our project. We looked at a company that was building carbon fiber sucker rods, and kind of got to a place and talked to them about that. But Danny got shipped off to Midland, or invited to go to Midland.
Shipped off to Midland, like you went and did a tour of Midland.
No, I mean that's
it was a choice. It wasn't shipped there.
but you were fortunate in that regard. Some of your colleagues were forced to go there, and
Yeah, that's right. I went there to try to help that situation. But
what year did you go to Midland?
2018.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, so
I'm from Midland originally, but
yeah, Midland's a good place. I actually had a hard time getting my wife to leave, believe it or not.
really,
after
it's
we got
actually
there, but
it's deceptively a good place.
Exactly.
Just it's got such good people there, and it's
it's a community, right?
Yeah.
It's a tight knit community.
Yeah.
So there's good and bad about it, right?
Yeah, there's
But
good and bad.
it's a lot better than most people from the outside think, right? About
Yeah.
Midland.
Well, so while we were in school, that the Anadarko started shipping everybody to the asset groups. And instead of having the mothership, they split everybody up and said, you need to be in the field, you need to be close to your business unit, you need to know what's going on. And so we had classmates that were impacted by that. We're told, you got to go to Midland, and they did class projects on how this is crap. Anadarko's best assets are their people. By doing this, you're ruining the culture of the business and all these things. And Danny and his family went to Midland, and we went and visited them there, and they just absolutely were in love. It was a good fit for you guys and where you were and all that good stuff. It seemed like.
Yeah. I think we went out there with an opportunity to. I mean, clearly the capital is going to Midland, right? And there's probably a lot of your listeners that are in Midland, right?
Yeah.
And they're there for that same reason. It's a great place to gain experience.
It's a land of opportunity.
It's a land of opportunity.
There's so
right?
much opportunity there.
And that's not just in oil and gas; it's in renewables too. I mean, it's really phenomenal when you go out there to see the
all the
amount of
wind and
renewables
That's
that
actually my
everything.
favorite.
Yeah,
Like, that's one of my favorite talking points when I talk to people outside of oil and gas. Is like West Texas is an energy powerhouse. Like, it's not just oil
absolutely.
and gas. You go out there and I mean, massive wind turbine farms, massive solar projects, and
hmm
that's
hmm
what I love
hmm
about West Texas. Is hey, doesn't give a shit. It'll just produce energy. It's energy agnostic, though.
Find,
You know,
Yeah,
find a
yeah,
way to make
yeah.
it. We
yeah,
make power,
yeah.
man,
So
wherever.
it's a super like I don't think there's anywhere else, not at least in the United States, like it, where you can just so much power density in a
Yeah.
concentrated area.
But you know, you
S-
asked about like why geothermal and how we got there, right? And I think for me and the way I like to describe it and is that you know I was really looking for an opportunity to find a way to generate more impact, right, with the work that I was doing and my skills and my gifts and my talents, right? And
Mhm.
you know, I worked on impact investing and I did that for a little while, and then I realized, you know what, I know how to drill wells really well. How can I you know take those gifts and talents and apply them in a way that helps drive the impact and the change that I want to see in the world, and boom, it was geothermal. It
Yeah.
So
just made
so he
sense.
starts sending me. Well, he calls me. I don't know, before COVID. And it's like, dude, I'm quitting my job. I've decided, like, I'm quitting my job. I'm gonna make this fund. We're gonna, like, do sustainable development goals. We're gonna change the world, and and this, that. And I'm like, okay, Danny, that sounds good. Like, I'm having fun making good money at the investment bank.
Yeah,
Like, have fun with that.
it's always a
Let
hard
me
sell
know.
for
Let me
investment
know if
bankers to
I
leave
can
their
help
job.
out in any way and how I can support you. And he took the plunge and really got into that. And then kind of towards the end of last year started sending me articles about geothermal and different things happening. And the Rolling Stone article came out, a Vox article came out. Guys like Fervo were getting tens of millions of
Yeah.
dollars ever, the like. And it's like, holy cow! Like, wait a minute! Like, he's over here chasing impact and trying to save the world. And it's like, well, wait, just that point exactly. Like, this is the place where it all comes together. Like,
Yeah.
this is it. And so we started getting real excited and looking at those teams. It's like with your, I mean, and we started dreaming about this in 2016, back when the PE guys were buying small acreage positions, drilling a couple wells, flipping it for a multiple. And we're at the bar after class, and it's like, you know how to drill wells. I know how to go and buy acreage. Like, holy shit, let's go and do
It's
this,
like we got
man.
the skill set.
And life
That's
got
right.
in the way, or our careers and everything. But
Yeah.
then last year, like, I got impacted by the energy transition. In October, I got laid off at the bank. They combined our power and renewables group
Yeah.
with our oil and gas group, and then minimized their exposure to oil and gas, or
I mean,
laid off.
investment banks were, I mean, yeah, just everyone closing down the oil and gas
That's
practices
right. And
and
all
reducing
shifting
them.
towards the
Yeah.
transition and renewables. And that's where all the
Yeah.
emphasis was. And it didn't even cross my mind. And Danny was out there trying to save the world. And then this happened. And then all these things kind of started hitting us. Is like, all right, this is it. Like, we started talking about this dream a long time ago. It's time to actually, like, put it into
To do it.
practice.
That's
And
super cool.
so that we did a BLM lease at the end of last year. Got
Yeah,
1,300 acres in Utah near the Forge project.
Oh,
And
that's
nice.
right.
that
Yeah.
kicked off our journey that we've been on.
So
Yeah.
what's y'all's thesis on geothermal as a company? I know that you made a comment in the intro that you guys are looking at doing it in a new age way that's not bound by geographical limits or geological limits.
Mhm.
Tell us a little bit about like how you guys look at it and what makes y'all's thesis. Um, what gives you an edge?
Yeah, I think for us, you know, we like taking the application of proven technology from oil and gas and cross pollinating that into geothermal, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, you think about things like horizontal drilling and multi-stage completions, and part of what we've seen, change the world literally in our careers, right, over the last decade. Taking that and applying that to geothermal is just a huge opportunity. But there's challenges to doing that, right? It doesn't, the way you design an oil and gas well is different than the way you design a geothermal well. So
Mm-hmm.
there's some very specific technology challenges related to, controlling permeability pathways and managing the reservoir system and drilling a well that has a profile that's fit for geothermal production, right? That requires innovation on top of some of the technological breakthroughs that have happened in unconventional oil and gas. And, I actually think about it as a combination of unconventional oil and gas and conventional oil and gas and conventional geothermal all meshed together into one, right? And
Hmm.
taking learnings and technologies from all three of those segments to create what is the next generation of geothermal energy development. So
Yeah.
that's really at a very high level what we're trying to do is combine all of those things
Yeah.
into something that's impactful.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty fascinating to me. I went and talked to someone from Enron and I was like, hey, did you guys mess around with geothermal? Like, yeah, we were drilling geothermal wells back in the 70s.
Hmm. Hmm.
And, it always had this promise of infinite energy. And it's like, it was
Yep.
just a fucking money pit. Like,
Yeah,
you drill a well, you get plugged up, have no flow, you drill another well right next to it. It's like, it just could never get it to work. And then, this is an old timer and eyes lit up and they're like, hey, you know what? With unconventional technologies, like it may make sense now in geothermal. And it's like I sit down and I have conversations and I drilled and completed a lot of wells and ran expandable casing. And like I look at it like, oh shit, expandable casing could be used, in some of these applications in geothermal. So you start looking at all these downhole technologies that we've developed in oil and gas and how they can be applied. I mean, like it blew my mind to find out that geothermal up to this point never cased hole and it was all open hole. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. I was like, well, what if you could run large diameter pipe and have a cased hole and have enough flow? And so you start getting people that are good at drilling wells, like start working on because to my knowledge, geothermal historically just like you don't have people that have drilled wells like we have drilled wells, right? So
That's
it's
right.
like you get people
yeah.
like us that know how to do it. You start focusing all of your time and effort and creativity towards it, then you start figuring out some hard problems.
Yeah, I think that's exactly it. And I don't like discrediting the conventional geothermal industry, right? Because I think there's a lot of experience and knowledge and expertise there
Yeah.
that we leverage at Criterion to be able to do the feasibility work and the design work and the execution work, right? That
Hmm.
we need to do is we're going to be using experts from geothermal that have done conventional geothermal for a long time. But I think, most geothermal companies or, conventional geothermal companies only drill a few wells a year, right? Where, our program at Anadarko or Endeavor is hundreds of wells just within our own division, right? And, $1 billion budget to go drill and complete wells, which is just a completely different order of magnitude than what most geothermal kind of
Hmm.
development programs look like. So, if you can take that sort of scale and that continuous improvement and that methodology, operating methodology, combined with the innovation that has taken place in technology and tools and processes, and put that into geothermal, then there really is an opportunity.
Yeah, let's you brought up something that's top of mind for me. I moderated this panel at a geothermal conference and it was on VC and private equity and geothermal and started looking up, some of their portfolio companies and one thing that I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around for geothermal is that you're going to need development of tools and tools that can drill and complete in hotter temperatures. And the problem that I see is that, if you have a technology who's fucking drilling with lasers or whatever it may be, you're spending all this money.
Acoustic waves.
Yeah, yeah, whatever it may be, you're spending all this money in R&D. What was nice about oil and gas, if you're spending money to develop a tool, you have a market to grow into because there's just a lot of wellbores being drilled.
Yeah.
So you're rewarded for it. Whereas in geothermal, you spend all this money to develop a tool, and then people are only drilling a couple wells a year, so there's no market to grow into.
Yeah.
I think that hamstrings the development of geothermal because I look at things from an entrepreneurial standpoint. How am I supposed to go out and develop a tool and commercialize it, and then I don't have a market to
Yeah,
grow
if the
into?
market's tiny.
Yeah,
No, I mean that's been, we met pretty early on with a CEO of a OCTG company. He's like, this industry's too small. Like, I'm spending my time focused on my oil field clients. The future in 10 years and 20 years from now, I can't think about that.
yeah,
That's
trying to survive
that's
today.
over there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah. But I don't know. We went to the GRC conference, Geothermal Rising
Yeah.
kind of industry group,
Yeah.
and that was really interesting dynamic. You had all these incumbents there, and then you had all these kind of newer oil and gas guys that are just like, there's maybe a little blood in the water, but it's like seeing the opportunity and thinking about, like, I mean, this is the unconventional story all over again.
Yeah.
Like making resources available that were not thought of being available. I mean, that's the exact premise that we just went through and
Yeah.
created energy independence for our country
Yeah.
on the back of all that, while at the same time spending trillions of dollars in Afghanistan and Iraq to get, access to foreign sources. We had this beautiful thing going on domestically
It's source rock just laying there waiting to be tapped
that
into, right?
nobody thought was ever
Yeah.
there. And that's really the opportunity we see with geothermal. And we've kind of gotten dinged a little bit by the VCs in particular, because we're trying to take a pragmatic approach to it of like, hey, we see resources that are immediately available. They don't take inventing new things. We can pull these things off the shelf, go start deploying it. Our goal, like we started out with, is to take this everywhere, but we're
Mhm.
going to do it in kind of a, crawl, walk, run type fashion, and take a phased approach and
Yeah.
learn all these things and do all those things. And it's like,
Yeah.
well, hold on, we're VC, we got tons of money, we want to like shoot for the moon, and we want to go like real big. And so we find ourselves in this weird like between
That's
VC
right.
and PC
Yeah.
PE kind of thing. And
It's a high
there's
stakes game that they want to play, right? But we're very cognizant, and I think the whole industry and everybody participating should be very cognizant that our well that we're drilling next year, our first fit for purpose new age geothermal well, right, needs to be a success. And if we take too much technology risk and we go too far out there and it's a failure, we may never get another chance. The industry may not get another chance, right?
Yeah.
If there's a few of these startup companies that
Burn out and don't do anything.
that
Yeah.
don't succeed. So the VC mentality tends to push you towards huge technology risk because they're okay with a
Yeah.
a few companies
Well,
failing
here's
versus
the problem is that, and not to bash VCs too much, I've done that enough on my show, but
well, and I don't mean to either.
We,
but that's just
we
their,
need money.
their
So
model.
VCs out there, we love
no.
you.
And I hope this is I hope this conversation is informative to any capital groups that are listening, because when I moderated that capital panel,
Yep.
people talk about their funds having patient capital, but here's the thing: is that I wrote this Twitter thread that went viral and was talking about the energy transition. And I was talking about how much opportunity there's going to be in oil and gas and other alternative energy sources, both. But to be in the space, I think I said verbatim, you're going to see a lot of money come from Silicon Valley that gets burned.
Mhm.
And because people look super ambitious, super optimistic, throw a lot of money at it, but physics are physics, right?
You got it.
And we know this more than anyone coming from oil and gas, that doesn't take much to have a bad well, right? To have a bad asset. And so you have to really be thoughtful, and love what you said. Like, hey, look, we can't get too far uh, uh, in front of our skis with some of this technology if there's stuff sitting right in front of us that we can take off the shelf. And
That's it.
I think, VCs need to really understand that, hey, one, it needs to be energy teams that are going out and doing this.
That's right.
You want to back some, team from, that has no experience in energy. But also you need to trust the team knows better than about how to drill these wells and create successful projects, because they're
Yeah.
more than likely the capital group's not bringing a ton of value from a knowledge base. And so they just need to understand, hey, it needs to be patient capital and need to have faith in the process and our thesis.
And
Yeah, couldn't
we
agree better.
we we are taking the same strategic approach to continuous improvement and driving down cost and development that our team did in oil and gas. And collectively we've drilled and completed thousands of wells, right? And so that track record and that background and iterating on this process multiple times, and starting with early phase exploration, right, and how we approach that and we get smart before we even drill that first well, and then how we build on that first well to do the next one even better and drive that cost curve down very quickly. I mean, that's absolutely a competitive advantage that our team has, right, and a differentiator. And there are other teams out there that have done this in oil and gas, and but there's not a whole lot of that emphasis and focus in geothermal right now, right? And there
Yeah.
needs to be more, right? We want to see other folks be successful for the industry, right, as a whole.
Yeah.
But it's definitely an edge that our team has, right? And in
Yeah.
addition to the technology and the markets that we're focused on,
And maybe
and
introduce our team a little bit.
yeah,
Yeah.
sure.
What's a team look like for a geothermal startup? Like, who do you go out? Get engineers, geologists. Looks like an oil and gas company.
That's easy. Those are two easy ones, right? And,
Yeah.
well, I think maybe I'll start with, and I'll let Shawn expand on this, but geothermal is different than selling oil and gas, right? Selling direct heat, MMBTUs, and kilowatts, right?
Mhm.
Looks a little different than selling barrels and MCF, and so a focus on the customer and the off taker and those specific characteristics that value that sort of thing looks a little different. So
Yeah.
I'd say that's
Yeah, that's right. We think about it as market back rather than kind of resource forward, and we think the conventionals and even some of the startups are taking that sort of approach of we're going to sell power on the grid and that's what we're going to do. Our business model is to be behind the fence, co-located with a commercial or industrial consumer, so that we can utilize direct thermal energy,
Yeah.
because the process of converting the thermal to over to power is actually relatively inefficient. And so if you can find a use for the direct heat, there's a potential big
That's
opportunity
interesting. Yeah.
there.
So, okay, let's talk about that a lot because when I said, physics or physics, like all energy will abide by the laws of physics, right? And
yeah.
I don't think a lot of people outside of energy think about loss of efficiency, across transmission. And so this is interesting. You made a comment saying that you think market back instead of what was it, asset forward
Resource
or resource
forward.
forward.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's a really interesting way of thinking about it. And actually, I saw one of my friends the other day post on Twitter. He had a comment that was kind of plays into this. He's really all about distributed energy, and
Yeah.
he's like, you're going to start to see manufacturing and plants move closer to the energy source because while cost of renewable energy is being driven down, one cost that isn't being driven down is cables,
It's
right? And so it's still,
transmission.
yeah, it's
That's
still
right.
expensive to
Transmission.
transmit, and then you lose efficiency, and so you'll actually start seeing more industry move closer to the direct energy source. And so it kind of sounds like that's how y'all are thinking about it instead of saying, hey, I mean, maybe y'all sell into the grid, maybe not, but hey, we can just take this heat and power up a
You got it.
facility.
Yeah, we want to be grid tied because there are, with intermittent sources, there are big shifts just throughout the day
Yeah.
in terms of what power prices are, and so we think of it as kind of a resource optimization type thing. We want to sell to the grid when it makes sense. We want the facility to use the power when it makes sense. We want them to use the thermal energy whenever they
Load
can.
management,
You
like I've
know,
been nerding out on this so much, especially from me. Like I think Bitcoin mining is going to be one of the fastest growing industries, and looking at what it can
sure.
do for load balance on renewables and kicking on or off when it's needed. I mean, it sounds like y'all kind of think about geothermal in the same way as well as like, hey, we can either sell into the grid, power up, this facility that's next to it.
That's
hmm
right.
Hell,
hmm
maybe you'll even see me hitting you up here in a couple of years to put some Bitcoin mining
What's
servers
yeah,
out
I
there.
mean, we're
Well,
hearing
it's
about
not
all
it's not
the
a bad solution for us to
Yeah.
integrate into our plan, and we're looking at that. And I mean, you mentioned taking manufacturing to where that energy is, right? And we're taking the energy to where the manufacturing is today, right?
Yeah.
And I think, where that's where we see a lot of opportunities today, right? Is to co-locate where these huge energy demand centers are located, these large industrial complexes, right? And if we can apply technology to be able to unlock geothermal resources in and around where these demand centers are, then there's just there's a huge opportunity there
So can
today.
we open up on that a little bit? So you
Yeah.
identify, these high demand centers, but then you're limited by what geology is like around
That's
there
right.
as well, right? So are you having to find, hey, it's high demand and it also has,
So back to the team and what does that look like? And I mean, the magic of what we're trying to do is create a system where we can marry the resource with the demand and
yeah,
identify those.
Mhm,
So
mhm.
we need folks on the business side to understand the market, what businesses or this may be most applicable around. But then we also need the technical team to say, well, where are the resources accessible today? And we also need the engineering prowess to say, well, how are we going to bring costs down and improve these things? And then when you marry all that, that's the step to taking it to deeper and hotter and different, more challenging
yeah,
environments and markets that maybe don't have the demand or maybe are deeper or whatever. And you've got those kind of levers that help you navigate the challenges and put the puzzle together to be able to execute on
yeah.
building a
There's a lot of technical expertise needed, because there's so many different variables, not just from even drilling and completing the
Yeah.
wells, but understanding the power market
that's
in that
right.
Mhm,
area. I
mhm.
mean,
And
there's
the
a lot that goes
regulatory
into it. Yeah,
side
yeah,
and
Mhm.
yeah. That's definitely not trivial. There's a ton to that. Can we talk a little bit about the asset that you guys have? Like, how did y'all identify that? And I think you said that y'all are going to drill it next year. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. So we, part of the technology that we have is, one of the technologies that we have is a screening tool, right? That we've built in a proprietary database of information, right? That helps us identify the demand centers and the resource and combine the, you know, multiple variables that are required to arrive at where the best location is.
That's
So
pretty cool.
we really like Texas, and the Texas Gulf Coast and East Texas has some elevated geothermal gradients, right? That
Yeah.
that look interesting, and there
That's what I
also
was like. You
tends
look
to
at the
be,
Haynesville, I mean,
yeah,
always
mm,
super hot field, right? And so,
Haynesville to Eagleford
yeah,
to the Valley in South Texas, the Gulf Coast.
yeah,
There's just a lot of really interesting potential there, and it just so happens there's a lot of a lot of penetrations and data that's been
yeah,
gathered in
yeah.
those areas too,
Poked a
right?
lot of holes around there. Yeah.
And so there's really a really interesting opportunity here in Texas, and I think we're going to hear more about the prospectivity of Texas in the coming months
That'll be
and
interesting.
years for
Yeah.
geothermal.
yeah, there's
I'm
a
so bullish on Texas,
there's
man.
a
Like,
there's a geo
It's hard not to be,
yeah, like
right?
I just like it's like every month or so I like get some new data point where I'm just like, fuck, I'm so bullish on Texas. Like you hear that? I mean, like I just talk old school oil and gas family office, and I mean, you hear about all the renewables that are being built out on their properties in
Yep,
West Texas.
yep,
And then
yep,
I think, I've always had this thesis. One, if you look at West Texas, I think it's Texas is going to be a hub for the space industry. You have SpaceX shooting
yep.
off rockets, Blue Origin, everyone, Firefly, everyone's in Texas shooting off rockets. And then you look at like the technical expertise from an engineering perspective we have in oil
That's
and
right.
gas.
Yeah,
And now, like with this thesis brewing that, hey, manufacturing is going to start moving closer to energy sources. I'm just like, think about the manufacturing that could start taking place out in West Texas. And so, like, all of, I mean, energy drives everything, right?
That's
And
right.
yeah.
it's like we're just talking about how West Texas is a powerhouse, and now you start talking about, well, hey, Eagleford and East Texas could be a powerhouse too with geothermal. So it's pretty exciting stuff.
Absolutely. So, when we first started looking at it, and I'm more kind of corporate development background, and so start looking at these project timelines, and it's like 7 years is the typical, so we did BLM lease first and started on that, and it's like, okay, and it's all this material and everything. And it's like, wait, it takes 3 years to get an environmental impact study done before you can drill your first well, and then you're gonna drill 4 exploration wells, and then you're gonna drill a producer well, and then we're gonna
It's a
start
long
making some
cycle.
like,
Yeah.
wait a minute,
Right.
like, hold
Yeah.
on, this, the prize though isn't West Africa here, like,
Yeah.
this isn't the barn burner that
Yeah.
like it can justify long cycle sort of
Yeah.
projects. It's like, okay, the first thing we need to solve is how do we minimize the time? How do we minimize the exploration risk? Well, we find where there's been oil and gas wells that have already been drilled to the depths that you're going to target. And now you've got this wealth of information and knowledge that you can lever and streamline those things.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
hey, another element, let's go from federal lands to private lands and speed up the regulatory side. And hey, we were looking at California pretty hard, and it's like, are they going to let us frack in California?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, probably not. Okay, let's go back to
That's
Texas.
actually
And
been like that's been a hot talking point with some in the geothermal community is if you even use the term fracking or
that's
you
right.
use multi-stage completion just because fracking has been so bastardized in the general population that
Hmm.
they think that any negative connotation that comes with that, like, hey, let's not kill geothermal before it even, gets off the ground. Because,
That's right.
I thought it was funny. Can't remember the geothermal company up in Canada, but they drilled and
Ever.
completed a big. Who was it?
Is it ever maybe?
Maybe so. You can throw any name out there and I'm like, oh yeah, it's them.
That's those guys.
but their PR announcement, like the header image was the frac spread that was out there completing it, and I'm just like,
Oh, no, it's deep.
yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
And general public, it was deep. General public like has no fucking clue that that's a frac spread and that you're fracking.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see how the general population
So what's
reacts to that.
happening right now is guys are putting plants in Nevada to then sell it into the grid in
In
California,
California, yeah,
because Nevada will let them
the little,
have a more favorable regulatory environment, and
yeah,
but the market access there
yeah.
is
Because I mean, I know California has geothermal assets. I know Warren Buffett's got some
that's right.
assets out there, and
Yeah. Salton Sea.
yeah, and there's some
Calpine
some
too.
pretty cool stuff happening with like Lilac Solutions extracting lithium out of
Hmm.
those wells, and
Mhm.
so
Mhm.
yeah, I think California just hates energy though as a whole, so like probably not the best regulatory environment for any asset.
Was talking to a friend yesterday, and he's like, "It's the like not my backyard guys. We're
It's the
like, we want all
NIMBYs.
these things, but like not
NIMBYs hate
happening
energy
here."
infrastructure. It doesn't matter if you're oil and gas or solar or wind. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter. They hate it. Like,
We were talking carbon markets, and he's like, "Yeah, you can go suck carbon out, or the low carbon fuel, or the low carbon fuel standards." And it's like, man, you can make that stuff in Singapore, but you can still get the regulatory credits in California because they don't want it in their state, but they do want,
yeah, my
they want
favorite
the
is
end product.
Safari Club the other day shut down a pipeline or protesting wanted to get it shut down. And the pipeline was for transmitting carbon from carbon capture projects. And Safari Club's like, this is just oil and gas pipelines way of greenwashing. And the pipeline's not even an oil and gas pipeline. Like they are dedicated to carbon capture transportation. And you see this like up in the East Coast, wind turbine farm, East Coast neighborhood didn't want it would have been a week's worth of construction to bury the cables running by, and they shut it down. So I'm a big believer that hey, even if oil and gas wasn't here, there's going to be an energy asset that's the next target because people hate energy
You can't
infrastructure.
even get affordable housing
I
in Houston
I
because
I,
everybody wants it
I,
in their
I
backyard.
I
Like,
promise you that people don't want huge solar farms and wind turbines in their backyards either, right?
but
Yeah.
So
so I mean, you think about land, and it's all about the best use of the resource, and
yeah,
Land
and
use.
you
Yeah.
look at these solar farms and how much surface footprint you'd have to, consume to be able to deliver energy. And one of the things we get costs thrown at us a lot because geothermal is, 5 times the price of
yeah,
solar. But you got to build 5 times as much solar to get to the same
yeah.
output as you
It's
would.
all about
And
energy
even then,
density,
you got
right?
to
I
build
mean,
Mhm.
storage into all of that to make it
yeah,
work. And
yeah. I
so,
mean, yeah, one, it's intermittent. Two, you need big surface area, large surface area to make it work. I'm a big believer in distributed solar, so solar on
yep, yep.
houses and then potentially battery as well. But commercial solar farms, like I've seen pictures over in the Middle East of them covering these entire mountainsides with solar. I'm like, yeah, go try to do that in the Puget Sound up in the Northwest. There's no
Mhm.
way they're going to let you put up that many solar panels. So energy density is important and
Mhm.
is a
Mhm.
concept that most people don't understand, but that's what's cool about I mean just wells in general, natural gas wells, geothermal
Yep.
wells is like, hey,
That's
look, you're
right.
taking up however big the pad is on a geothermal asset, I don't know, 100 by 100, whatever it is, and that's it. And how much megawatts power can we generate from that? And to do something comparable with solar, you got to go wide
That's
across
right.
the surface. So
Land use is huge, and I think when you look at whether it's the EIA or IHS or whomever that forecasts where energy generation is going to come from in the future, right? Wind and solar have such a large growth, trajectory, right? And it looks like that's where a lot of the renewable capacity is going to come from, and I think they will grow tremendously, but when you think about the challenges around that we're talking about right now, um, it doesn't seem like that growth can be sustained in that way, at least from our own projections. So we really see the need for geothermal to come in and supplement that in a much bigger way than what's being forecasted currently. And
yeah,
these forecasts are historically incorrect, right? So I like to think that we're onto something,
there's
right?
only
We
one.
know
I know
we
one
know
thing
it's
about any
wrong.
forecast or models. It's wrong. Either
That's
Right,
one
right.
way or
exactly.
another, it's
We
wrong.
know that
Yeah.
much. That's
But
right.
I feel pretty confident that $1 billion being spent on geothermal drilling and completions currently, right, and forecasted to be $4 or $5 billion by 2030. But we actually think it needs to be tens of billions of dollars, right, with tens of thousands of wells a year rather than just a few thousand
Yeah,
wells
I
a
mean,
year.
$4 or $5 billion. I mean, that's nothing compared to how much money we poured into shale over a decade,
Yeah.
Yeah,
right? So,
yeah.
yeah, I agree with you that if you really want to move the needle and make an impact, then more resources need to be funneled over to that.
That's right. And the geothermal, to go from $1 billion to $4 billion in a handful of years is a pretty aggressive growth profile. But we think it needs to be more aggressive than that, right? To be
Yeah,
And
impactful.
think the technology and what's available is ready to go out and start
I think that's
doing
I think
that.
It's
that's
doable.
where
Yeah,
I'm not super involved in the geothermal community and conversation, but I do think that there's, to me, seems to be a disconnect in that belief because it seems like a lot of money is going towards technology that can enable deeper drilling
Yep.
instead of maybe assets that could be generated or producing energy today.
yeah,
Um, One thing I have noticed though is like it doesn't seem like there's a riff from some of the impact funds that, hey, it's oil and gas guys coming and doing this. So I think they're like, oh no, hey, we should be leveraging that expertise, which is important to me, because you talk about the most technical workforce in the world, it's oil and gas. And I'd hate how I've got lots of friends in climate tech and renewables, and I preach this message to them all the time, like, hey, dude, you should be leveraging the talent and knowledge that's in oil and gas. Just a lot of smart people that know how to get shit done and figure it
That's
out.
right.
And so,
A lot of grit.
yeah, a lot of grit too. A lot of grit. You have to have grit to work in oil and gas. But yeah, I think that people are starting to come around to, um, the fact that, hey, maybe there's some stuff that we can work on today, make an impact today,
that's
and
it.
we're not 15, 20 years removed with technological.
In
Mhm.
15 and 20 years, we're going to do the things that you're chasing and trying to do.
Yeah.
We just to have a more pragmatic approach on how to get
And
there.
it's actually
That's
kind of
right.
like back to my point talking about the commercialization of tech. Like, hey,
Hmm.
you should just get to taking the low hanging fruit, all these assets, and then let the market develop. And
Yep.
then once there's a market, now you can start developing technology
Hmm.
to expand. Like, we didn't start off drilling unconventional wells, right? In shale, we would have never succeeded. We started off with tapping into salt domes and other
Yep.
conventional
Yeah,
sources. And then
and let that drive the innovation
that
of the
drove the innovation.
technology.
Yeah, it evolved from that. So that's
Hmm.
actually, didn't think about it from that perspective, but that's the way that it's got to happen.
So one thing and kind of where we are in the company phase is, I mean, we're doing a fundraise right now and looking to execute on this project that
Yeah.
we're working on, and so raising some money for the parent company in the technology development side, but also trying to raise some money to go drill a well next year. And
Yeah.
really, the opportunity we see is building this kind of industry advisory group, and so we've been talking to corporates for the last 6 months or something, and they have the technology. Like, we want to be a development company. We don't want to make bits or make a certain application that goes on a rig. Like, let's let these subject matter experts do that, but they need partners that are doing projects and that can be users of that to
Mhm.
help them inform and, figure out where the technology needs to go. So
Yeah.
we're doing this RFP process and looking for commitments from service providers to kind of create our V1 of our industry advisory group. We really see that coalition as the folks that are going to drive
Interesting.
innovation
Yeah.
together and
Interesting.
execute together in a successful manner.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I'm sure we could help you guys with that effort, put something together because
I
that's
would love
really,
that.
yeah. And we're all
Yeah.
about the open source mindset and bringing everyone together to
That's what
figure
it's going
out
to take. It's the
problems. So yeah,
village.
yeah, for sure, for sure.
And I'd say too, we've had a lot of very positive responses to that sort of approach, and
Yeah,
that we want to partner together, and that's how we were successful at Anadarko and Endeavor, and in my past, right? It wasn't us driving every decision at the rig site, right? It's a collaborative effort, and we let the guys in the field and the service and equipment providers that know their stuff really well help drive the frontline decisions.
yeah,
And that's how you get things done, and how you're effective and you're efficient and you stay out of the curve, and you stay in front of the pack,
yeah. That's
whether
what
it's in
I
the
remember.
Permian or in West Africa.
One of
So
my
that's
friends,
that's the idea that we're trying to put into
one of
play.
my friends kind of climbed up the drilling engineer ladder pretty quick, and he's like, my secret is I just listen to the service hands and everyone around me. He's like, they know what they're talking about. He's
That's
like,
right.
yeah. So when you
That's
lean
right.
on others, yeah, you can definitely go further,
Well,
faster.
well, there's
That's
also
right.
some challenges there too if you just let the consultants
Oh yeah.
drive the execution, and that's what you've been successful with in your career, right?
Well,
Is
it's a balance, but
Yeah.
but it's a very, I mean, so much technology, so many technical experts involved in the execution of a single well, right? That it has to be a very carefully coordinated, collaborative effort. I mean, there's a balance between,
Well,
you
100%.
know,
Man, there's so it's such an intricate operation,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
And so many different
It's a
like
dance, right?
look,
It's
you
like a
know a ton
dance.
about drilling and completing
like
wells.
in the
Do you know how to run
composer.
do you know how to run
That's right.
expandable casing?
Yeah,
Like so if he orders an expandable a piece of expandable casing, like he's not going to run it himself. He's going to call a tool hand
that's right.
that knows how to run it, that has and work together, and it's going to be the same thing in geothermal, I
You got it.
imagine.
Yeah, yeah.
So you guys, real quick before we wrap up the show, y'all are currently fundraising. What kind of groups are you guys talking to? I mean, is this I know you're raising into the parent level company and then on a project basis as well.
Mhm.
Are you guys I'm just interested from my perspective. I mean, do you guys go to VCs, private equity, family offices? Like who are the targets for you guys?
So we spent the early part of the year looking at a non-op project in Canada and talking a lot with private equity and understanding some of their concerns and where they are with the project. We spent the last kind of 4 to 6 weeks really talking with VCs
Hmm.
and angel groups and family offices and understanding where they are in the process and what we're trying to do. And the best fit that we've found has really been these corporates because rather than taking the approach of, I mean, we need a lot of money, right? Drilling one well is, going to cost us
Nothing
10
cheap
million
about it.
bucks.
Yeah, nothing cheap
You
about it.
know,
Yeah.
and so it's like to go talk to these guys from a startup level. If I need $10 million to go do my, kind of proof of concept, and their mind just blows up and like, wait a minute. It's like, but no, we want to go drill one well. And so, kind of the corporates and the folks that have oil and gas backgrounds have been the ones that really understand what we're trying to do. They get the idea of the
Mhm.
technology development, vision here and where we
Yeah.
see what we need to do. And
Yeah.
those have been the folks that we've found kind of the most traction. And right now we're kind of putting that to the test to see, what have we really been able to do and how far away are we?
Yeah.
And then based on that, go back to the VCs and the angels and the private equity guys and say, look, here's the level of commitment we've been able to get from corporates. They believe in this. They see a path in here. They see a reason to go do this. Are you willing to come in and help us kind of fill that gap? And we haven't figured out kind of who that right person is, if you
Yeah, it's
will.
I mean, you try fundraising into a can't say it's a new market because geothermal is not new, but there's definitely this renewed interest in
Mhm.
it
Yeah.
where
Mhm.
everyone's talking about it, right? But that's what I was talking on that capital panel. I was like, who's the money come from? Does it come from private equity? Does it come from VC? Because
Mhm.
some of these people like impact funds, they're VCs, and I'm just like, I don't. VC's not a fit for oil and gas assets. Like you wouldn't see them
Yeah.
investing in oil and gas
Right.
assets. Is it a fit for geothermal assets? But it's private equity to that point where, they understand it to where they can make
But the
commitments.
risks and the
Yeah.
returns aren't quite there with
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
other things that you're doing, and so
Yeah.
you need a longer sighted kind of person that
Yeah.
believes in the vision
Which that's
here
what, someone from Chevron Tech Ventures was on that
on
panel.
the
And I was like,
panel.
it
Yeah,
really makes sense for, some corporate entities to
That's
get
right.
involved and make
it
commitments. So,
does.
We talk a lot about being in between VC and PE, right? In terms of how they think about risk and technology readiness and those kinds of things. But the corporate strategics have really been excited about this, and I mean, we may not even have to go raise money from VC
Yeah.
at the end of the day, because there's enough interest from folks that understand subsurface risk and drilling wells and these technical challenges, and have enough strategic uh, value that they can get out of participating
yeah.
in an early stage company to make it make sense on a couple of different levels. So
Yeah.
where a
That's
VC is, a little more, they just have a different mandate and kind of a
Yeah.
different
100%.
decision making
100%. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
process.
but really,
There is a gap in between VC and PE. You need patient capital that's also risk averse, and
yeah,
Yeah.
you need a
it's
little
not
bit of that
necessarily
bridge.
VC or private equity.
And I think at some point they come into play, right? But
Yeah.
I think early on in thinking about like the well design and the subsurface risk, and some of these things like are complicated, right? And
Yeah.
I mean, we need smart money, we need smart capital, right?
Yeah.
To help with those
Well,
decisions
to help
on the
shape the
corporate
industry
strategic
too.
side.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's where I think can benefit a lot from VC. And I mean, those are the folks that we've seen come into the space already and have made those commitments, but they've made those commitments on the back of these guys making a promise that they're going to have one well design that rules them all and it's going to do everything. And we've got these things back to physics that don't require fracking and this, that, and the
Yeah.
other. But it's not grounded in, it might work, it might not.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the space.
Yeah.
Whereas the approach we're taking, I think, is a little bit different. But I really think this makes sense for VC of where the industry is, because it's going to take some upfront technology and execution risk to get it to where it's ready to go into private equity and fit the model that they're accustomed to
Yeah.
or used to.
Yeah.
And so to me, I mean, it just logically makes sense of this
Of the
bridge or
arc,
this
yeah,
arc of when it
yeah.
kind of folds over. But, I don't know, just haven't been successful with kind of this, again, that pragmatic sort of, we come from industry, we go get shit done.
Well,
like, how are we gonna
yeah.
figure this
That's
thing
the
out?
most
Let's go
frustrating- that's the
do
most
it.
frustrating
I
thing
would,
is
I would
awesome.
frame it a little differently. We have been successful
Yeah.
Of course.
with that approach with
Yeah.
the corporate strategics that
Absolutely,
understand what we're
absolutely.
doing.
Yeah.
Right? They understand what it takes to drill a well.
Yeah.
But not
They understand
the VCs.
physics.
Yeah.
They,
The
they,
problem
they want
is
sharks with lasers on their heads. And,
yeah.
that
The
kind
problem
of
with
thing.
VC is like, one, there's an education barrier, right? Or a hurdle
Yeah.
that you have to get over in educating the market. And
Mhm.
to your point, it's like, we're oil and gas people. We want to go get stuff done and make it happen. And so sometimes that's frustrating when you feel like you're being held back by lack of understanding from the capital groups. But no, I think that there's money moving into the space. You see it happening both from private capital markets
Yep.
and then government mandates as well. So think that the tide's turning and people are going that way. So
That's right. As I mentioned, the DOE too is another
yeah,
kind of
exactly.
avenue.
Yeah.
I mean, they've been supportive, but even the energy transition, geothermal is this like redheaded stepchild.
It is, yeah.
Hydrogen and CCS, but
It is.
from our perspective and an impact perspective, it feels like the thing that makes the most sense out of.
Yeah,
of
I
all of
mean, the
that.
thing is, like, when you see the money pouring in, like, especially private equity guys, they just care about raising funds and deploying capital
Yep.
so they can take management fees. And for them, it's a wide open lane for wind turbines and solar farms. It's much like shale was. Like, oh shit, we can deploy a lot of this very quickly.
Mhm.
And so it makes sense that naturally that's where the money's gravitating and flowing towards. But if someone's listening to this show, I'm sure we're going to have a wide range of people listening to this, both from impact funds, VCs, oil and gas people. Where can they find y'all at? Do you have a website? Are y'all on LinkedIn?
Yeah, those are two primary channels: website, LinkedIn,
Yep.
What's the website?
CriterionEP.com.
CriterionEP.com. So we'll leave a link to that in the show notes. So if you want to check it out, I got a cool website. I looked at it 2 seconds before y'all walked in.
Thank
So
you.
haven't got to dive into
We
it too
need to
much.
do
but-
some work on it, but
Yeah,
it's,
update coming, but
No, I thought it was
it's
good.
always there's
Yeah.
always
It's-
next generation.
It's always, hey,
is,
when you're building a
in the
company,
works.
there's always an evolution of
You got
products.
it,
So
yeah. you got it.
you got so much time in the day. and
Yeah.
there's other mission critical
Yeah,
items
for
at the
sure.
moment we're focused
No,
on.
this is super fascinating to me, guys. I'm excited about the idea of geothermal, and it's good to hear some oil and gas people attacking it and hear how y'all think about it. So hopefully we'll have you back on the show sometime soon with an update. When y'all spud that well, I want to come up there and
There you
we'll
go.
take video.
Come out.
Yeah,
You bet.
yeah,
Absolutely.
for
Love
sure.
it.
Boots,
So-
cowboy hats, and pictures. Geothermal in Texas.
There we
you
go.
know,
Hell
the
yeah. I'm all
subtitle. That's
about
what we're
it.
doing. That's right.
Well, I appreciate you guys coming on the show.
No, thank
You
you,
bet.
so much for
You
having
bet.
us and everything you guys are
Yep.
doing as well.
Good job. Yeah.
Thanks, man. So, guys, if you like this show, which you should like this show if you're listening to us for 3 years now, leave us actually, you can leave us a review, but more than a review, I want YouTube subscribers. Check out our podcast on YouTube. We've been putting this out on video for a while now. Make sure to hit subscribe. Sign up to the BDE newsletter, Big Digital Energy, on our website, digitalwildcatters.com. We send out energy news once a week. Catch you guys next week.